this one is
Welcome to Partnerships for Profit, the podcast where we bring you inside the world of joint ventures, strategic partnerships, and powerful collaborations. Each episode, you'll dive into conversations with top entrepreneurs, visionaries, and business leaders, unlocking the secrets to building profitable relationships that drive growth and success. Whether you're looking to expand your network, find new referral partners, or scale your business, you're in the right place. Let's get started.
Welcome everybody to Partnerships for Profits. Today, my guest, Kerri Coby White. I like to explain it as like this whirlwind that came from the teaching world and then blew into the law firms, started teaching them how to print money. Kerri White is the founder of KerriJames and the brain behind Loop and the F5T Framework. These systems have revolutionized how law firms grow, convert, and scale. She doesn't do fluff; she builds machines like Tony Stark. So, without any further ado, let's dive in. By the way, if you do own a law firm or a lawyer and you work with them, this is going to be something you want to pay attention to. Write everything down because she's about to blow you away.
Thanks, Dean.
Absolutely. So this is not your first time hanging out with us.
It's not. And, it's so funny because every time the title Partnerships for Profit has so many meanings, the true partnerships, inked, spiritual partnerships that really transform you. And then of course, partners that aren't actually partners, but people that you're partnered with in various ways. And I'm coming off a weekend, having one of the women who work for me, visiting in town and working together for several days. And it really is powerful what the right people can do for your business.
Let's go from there then. I have some other questions and I'd like to kind of get a quick, even though you've been with us before and most people probably heard a little bit, but we'll go back and kind of give an explanation for Loop and F5T. But what do you find that, because I don't think many people take the time to do this, which is literally have one of your coworkers that is up there with you and you take time outside of work to get to know each other and understand each other and build that relationship?
Yeah. So I'm probably really too good at that. My clients all have my cell phone number, and I've always said I live in this world of gray where I like when my worlds collide. My business has become my life, and therefore those relationships are really, really important to me because it's where I spend the most time. So having people that I love working with and love working for is critically important. So I've gotten more selective about the clients I take on because I know I'm a lifer. I really do hunker down with my clients and figure out ways to really invest in their business. I think we're darn good at it. And so if we're going to get that deeply entrenched, I want to enjoy the people that I'm going to do it with.
Do you find that it takes you less time now? Obviously, you can judge people quicker. You feel that frequency.
I don't know that it's that I judge people quicker so much as I feel far less desperate for business than I did in the early days and said yes to everything. Yeah. I've learned, and I think every entrepreneur does need to learn where their lane is. And I always tell people I'm awful at staying in my lane because I'll come in the office and I'll be like, oh gosh, we really need to work with them on this. And I know we're here for that, but I kind of see what's going on over here. And that's again where that relationship comes from. I think you need to have really vulnerable transparency into your business. When you invite a consultant in, you have to be radically transparent and let someone point out your flaws. And I think that now that I've kind of gotten more selective about who I work with, I want to be able to give more to those people that I do work with. And that's a challenge. I think it's a bit of an obstacle to scale that a lot of consultants probably struggle with is, if you're consulting, there are only so many hours in the day, and if you really add value, certainly there's benefit financially to being somebody who really knows their stuff. And so, maybe you can afford to work with fewer people. But at the end of the day, if you want to grow a business, you have to find ways to sell something other than your time.
Yeah, yeah, that's hard. Do
It
do
is.
you feel like that's something that you end up dealing with most when you walk into new firms?
Um, well, I'm constantly struggling with that, and I think part of it comes from the teacher version of me, which
Yeah.
I can do it, I know how to do it, I'm going to do it, and trusting other people to do things is another huge challenge
I was gonna
as
say, do you
a
find that
growing
a
business.
control factor of your
Oh,
own or
yeah. I think that, and again, I think these are pretty universal truths for entrepreneurs is
yeah.
you think you do something really well and you don't necessarily believe everybody does it as well as you. And so it's hard to let go of the reins. And, speaking of partners, one of my partners, my partner that I recently bought the business out from, he said to me early on, 85% is going to have to be good enough. And that just still doesn't sit with me. And
Yeah.
so I still take on a huge amount of individual client work. But I am always working on ways to figure out how do I sell something other than my time. Having a partner is certainly one of the ways that you can not be the only one. Finding someone who truly complements your strengths and balances you out is critically important. But it comes with its own challenges, and finding ways to take a lot of the things off your plate that other people can do well is obviously important. But I got to tell you, I even find when I'm doing things that I know absolutely someone else can and probably should be doing, it isn't necessarily something I'm willing to give up because I think it helps me better understand, what the realities are in my clients' businesses, and I still like it. I guess that's the good news is at the end of the day, I still really like the work that I do, and so, I don't really necessarily want to just get the report. I want to get my hands on the data. So it's a challenge.
Yeah. Yeah, I could see like that battle of you knowing how you do it. And even if the other person
Yeah.
doesn't do it wrong, it's a different
Well,
way than you do it.
it's different. And I remember this from, probably like a Good Housekeeping magazine article once upon a time. And it said, do you want it done or do you want it done your way? Because you can't have both.
Yeah.
There's a very specific way I like my towels folded, and my husband doesn't fold them that way. And
God.
I fought it and fought it and fought it, but I don't fight that one anymore because you know what? I don't have time to fold the towels. If he's going to fold them, then they're not going to be folded my way.
You
And I
could wait
accept
a
that
second. I'm
now.
gonna see if my wife is free to.
Yeah. Did you hear that, honey?
I
Yeah.
cannot
So
tell you how
you
many
do.
times like
Yeah.
yeah.
And that one's such a simple one for me. Like, why can't we fold the towels my way? But I really do regularly call upon that when I'm getting something that is fine. It's not my
Yeah.
way, but it's fine. And I need to decide. And that's an interesting when we're looking at all these different solutions in AI right now with our clients. And,
Yeah.
everybody wants AI to do it their way, but there's a zillion different ways that law firms have been doing things. And it's no different than do you want it done or do you want it done your way? And you can't necessarily have both. So the towel, that towel message bears its ugly head in my
Oh
business
yeah.
all the time.
Yeah. And I find with AI, like even if you want it done your way, you still have to give it the time to learn your way. Like it
Oh,
adapts, but
absolutely.
it's not quick.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, there's a process, and I've really enjoyed that process. And I think this does come down to where I think it's very interesting. There are a lot of people who want to build a business, but don't necessarily haven't yet figured out what their expertise is that they're going to bring to market, let alone how to scale it from there. And I think that, with AI, we're seeing businesses grow and grow quickly, but you still have to have like, what's that thing that I'm bringing forward? What am I offering?
I think that's the
And
dangerous part.
yeah, no, and if you look at some of the most successful businesses, they're really not reinventing the wheel. They're maybe innovators, but not inventors, right? So
Right.
we're all trying to figure out, what is the value that we bring to the world, and then, Okay, so I've figured that out, and I have people who are willing to pay for it. And then how do I scale it from there? I mean, at least that's, those are the paces I take myself through quite regularly.
Yeah, I feel like we're kind of looking at that little bit of danger of where AI does stuff at least almost good to
Yeah.
up to par, and people are going to think, oh, well, I can do this without trying to find what's my talent that I can bring to use AI to help get
Well,
that
and
better.
this comes again to the educator in me. I think I'm fascinated by what we can do with AI, but I think more than ever, it requires people who think differently.
Yeah,
So AI is able to spit things out amazingly well, but how you get it there is very much about the probing and the critical thinking and that higher, deeper levels that you need people to get to in order to elicit a response that really isn't just what everybody else can do. And I think that's where, you can talk to AI about things that I talk about, and it might give you a good sixth grade paragraph, but
sure.
it's not going to get you into the real complications unless you know how to really critically probe. So I think that's an interesting place for people to focus their expertise is, where are my critical thinking skills going to be best applied here?
Yeah, because I find AI very partial per the person. If you ask it a certain thing with kind of an assumption of what you're looking for, it's going to validate you versus
Oh,
challenge you.
for sure. I mean, and I swear, my AI is the biggest people pleaser. Sometimes it'll spit something back, and I'm like, no way, and validate that. I need sources, and it'll have completely made it up. So the hallucinations are real, which again is why we need critical thinkers. And we've spent all these years, talking about teaching kids to write. And I actually think that critical reading is going to be more important than ever because we're never going to be able to match outputs from AI. And so I find now I can prompt and nudge and critically think my way into exceptional writing pieces, but I better be darn good at critically analyzing that product to make sure it's communicating what I'm trying to communicate.
Yeah.
I think critical reading is going to be more important than writing these in the years to come.
What percentage would you say you guys are dealing with some of the AI stuff to help move law firms forward right now?
I'm encouraging my clients to focus on AI as I hope everybody's saying this, but very much as a tool and not a replacement. That's first and foremost. I think we have to invite AI as a person on our team and kind of look at it as somebody who can add a lot of value, but ultimately we are the responsible parties. I wrote an article some months back about how I'm using AI in my business, and it's very much focused on scale. How do we can do more, we can be in more places, but we are still ultimately the experts. And so again, It comes down to making sure that we're the overlords. We can't let the AI just run the show. We have to be, which I actually don't find terribly interesting, to be honest. Like have you been to these grocery stores lately where everything is self-checkout?
Yeah.
And there's somebody standing there supervising self-checkout, and I would want to claw my eyes out if that was my job. I would much rather scan groceries than watch other people scan groceries. And I kind of feel like that's the same way I am with AI. I love working with it to massage something into a beautiful finished product. But if AI is doing all the work and my job is just to read and tweak, I kind of get bored. So I think we're all figuring out how it plays into our businesses. And yes, everybody's looking for solutions.
Yeah.
I'm a little worried about the firms that aren't looking for solutions, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
And there are plenty. For years I've been on the legal conference circuit, and at some points I felt they get kind of redundant. We're talking about Google business profiles and SEO and LSA, and we're focused on reviews. And yet, the last 2 years, like the AI is just moving so fast that it really does go to show you've got to keep a toe in your industry's conference scene so that you're constantly getting the new newsworthy elements of your industry. It's a responsibility to your clients to stay on top of it. And honestly, we can't afford to not pay attention to things like this, which is why one of the reasons, when I talk to lawyers about having a growing business, I think a lot of the staff are like, well, we don't need more clients. We're so busy. but a growing business is one that can invest in technology. And if you can't invest in technology, you're not going to be able to stay competitive. And if your business isn't growing, then it's actively dying. And so, I kind of look at this like, we really need to do well to be able to continue to invest in AI and invest in the people who know AI. So it's important that the attorneys, not just rest on their laurels. The people who are coming around the bend have new ideas and new ways of doing things, and we need to be paying attention to it.
Yeah, I kind of look at it kind of like the streaming services where like if the streaming service continues to build, yes, you don't have to keep going and adding more stuff, but the other guys are. So at
Yes.
some point, they're going to be offering so much more with so much little that if you're not keeping up with that.
Yeah. I mean, I said to my husband one day, do you think the guys who were running cable TV sat around and thought this gravy train was ever going to end? We were just going to be, Verizon, Comcast for life. And,
Same guys at
things.
Blockbuster.
Yeah. I mean, we have to keep an eye forward, and that's hard. It's really hard. And to go back to the big picture thesis here on partners, my partner of years was just fantastically interested in all things growth related. And I'm so grateful that he was so deeply entrenched in what's coming, because I was so deeply entrenched in serving clients. And now I have to wear multiple hats without that same partner. And it's hard. But it is, I feel like I found a piece of me that I didn't even know existed, because I was leaning on somebody who had maybe the greater strength on that side of things. And I think there's great strength in partnerships for that reason. But it's been kind of exciting to find that in myself as well.
Love it. I'll pop off AI for a sec. Let's jump into Loop real fast. Let's just do a quick overview on Loop and F5T, just to kind of give everybody an idea of what all's going on there.
Back to that chat though of, what's your expertise? I was going to conferences, and I was doing legal marketing and trying to get a foot in the door, but there were so many people doing legal marketing. I just didn't see that as a lane I wanted to compete in. I knew my stuff, but I wasn't doing anything differently. And yet, as a marketing person, I recognized that if I wanted to be respected for the work I did in marketing, then I was going to have to be darn good at intake. And so Loop was built for a single client. I was like, I got to get this intake in order. And so I built out this system. It ended up being just life-changing for the intake team, profound difference to the bottom line with regard to conversions. And then I had the outputs of all this data, and I just became an absolute data junkie. And so between what I was able to accomplish in intake and the data I had produced, I was showing up at these conferences saying, damn, nobody's talking about either of those two things with the intensity that I am. And so Loop was really born, out of that desire to fix something that I don't think the industry really necessarily saw as broken. And it's interesting because I've been interviewing this week. I've spoke literally today with 3 people who have done legal intake. And when they came to my website, they were like, wow, I had no idea there was a company specifically for this. And I think that we really did fill a very specific need, which is, if you look at the prices for legal marketing in particular, it is the costliest vertical on the internet, and it is banking on you having airtight intake. And if you don't, you're going to outspend the ROI darn fast. And so, I come along and I'm like, I can look at this intake and see what you're spending and what you're leaving on the table. And what we can learn from your data is just incredible. So if we can tie those pieces together, your marketing, your intake, your data, suddenly we can really get a recipe for strengthening those systems and really improving that ROI. The 5T is our approach to do that, which is focusing on the team, the tools, the tactics, the targets, and the tracking. So who is going to do this thing that we're trying to achieve? What tools do they need to be most successful? What skills must they employ that we can train them to do? What is it that we're trying to achieve, and how are we going to measure progress? And if we approach every department in the law firm that way, we can really make a big dent in moving forward while acknowledging the challenges in the industry, which it is costly, it is competitive, and there's a lot of expense related to it. So how do we really run a profitable law firm with those challenges?
So Luke kind of finds the holes in the cup before you obviously fill it. And
Yeah,
then you'd
well,
say five.
it's so funny because like I said, I started out in marketing and I hated talking about marketing because if your intake wasn't airtight, then I didn't want to do any
Didn't
marketing for
matter.
you because you're just going to be pissed. I know how expensive it is to market, and you're going to be coming for me when I start spending all this money and you're not signing clients. So it became one of my running mantras that clicks aren't clients. And I would look at this firm and I'd say, yeah, I mean, we can do marketing, but you're not gonna be happy. And so here's what we need to do. And I would pretty much look for, 3 really critical pieces to be in place. You absolutely have to have a team that's trained for conversion. You have to have a system that is designed to capture and convert. And you have to have the right mindset, which is this is an investment, not an expense. And if I can get my clients to buy into those 3 concepts, then we can be very successful together. And, when I look at spending other people's money, and my husband will tell you I'm darn good at it, but I want you to be really ecstatic by the results. So that's what allows me to sleep at night. And so if we're doing all the things right, we're going to see the results. You're going to be happy. I'm going to be happy. And ultimately, that's the true measure of a successful partnership.
Yeah. Otherwise, you're just losing clients as soon as you land them anyway.
I don't do well like that. Maybe, like I said, AI is a people pleaser. It's learned it really well from me. I want my clients to be really happy and I want to sleep at night. So we need to dial in the details. So when people, as my career.
But I think that shows from your relationship building focus as well. If you're going to get close to these people, the last thing you want is the people you just kind of brought into your friend family to be unhappy with you day in and day out.
No. That doesn't work well for me. It's pathological client care. I mean, I can't help it. And I know that that's what has absolutely contributed to my success is a deep commitment to my clients. But it's hard, that's hard. Everybody knows I'll answer your phone call. I will.
It's definitely hard because you gotta troop at home as well. That you're manning double there.
Yeah, no, there's a lot going on. But that is the life of the entrepreneur, right?
Plus the choice of an Australian Shepherd. What are you gonna do?
Yes, if we could all have the same energy that my Aussie has, we'd be lucky.
Man, we somewhat adopted one for a little while to take care of, and man, it was the only dog that I was like, let's find this kid a home, man.
Oh, geez. I know. Well, he's a pandemic error mistake, and it does happen, but he's ours now. I couldn't part ways with him, and he can always tell when a call's about to wrap up. He makes an appearance to just go. He knows that sound of, oh, well, all right. It's been great. So
it's awesome.
Keeps me on my toes.
So I have one more quick thing I wanted to cover, just because this was one of your things that I really loved. Where was it? Active listening isn't a soft skill. It's a business growth tool. And I think like that, I come from the entertainment world. I've been an actor and coached actors for 2+ decades at this point. And to me, it was listening that was always the thing to work on.
That's so fascinating because I have nothing to do with the entertainment world, but I always thought if you could get out of repeating your lines and instead listen to the person speaking to you, your lines will come naturally to you. Well, let's make sure this is being recorded because I'm going to compliment my mother-in-law. I could say in July, wow, I love that lemon juicer. And I could count on it at Christmas.
That's amazing.
She always manages to pick up on the subtle things that people say. And I really got good at that in business because if you learn to listen to the things that maybe aren't the focus of the conversation, but have come up, you're like, ooh, I'm going to remember that for next time. My first whale of a client had 2 yellow labs, and I gave her for Christmas one of those Roombas, and she was blown away by it. But it's like, back in the fall, we've been talking about dog hair. And so that is the kind of stuff that really wins people over and gets their attention.
Yeah.
I think podcasts are a great example of that. We're always worried about that dead air. And so we're always thinking of what we're going to say next, as opposed to tuning into what we need to say here. So one of the lines I used to say to my kids when they were little is, you need to listen louder. You're not talking louder, you're listening louder.
Yeah.
And we all need
It's
to
the old
listen
school,
louder.
you have two ears and one mouth.
Yeah. Dios
Yeah.
can say to me. Yep. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting because I've kind of shifted to now I help people with on-camera stuff, and it tends to be the same thing. Like we want to dominate or make sure that it stays entertaining, when even for the actor, like your job, literally the last thing is to be entertaining. It sounds ridiculous because you watch them for entertainment, but that's the last job you have. The main job is
to
be
listen.
here, be present, talk and listen.
What a great lesson for all of life, though. And certainly when it comes to, I'll bring it back to the intake side for a second. One of the trainings that I do ask people to kind of put into columns what the client is saying versus what we need to be hearing. And that cuts both ways, right? When we say something to a client, they may not be hearing what we're saying. They're making assumptions, right? So when I say, I'll fold the towels, my husband hears, you suck at folding towels.
Yeah.
When all I mean is that I'm happy I have time right now, I'll fold the towels. And so what we're communicating is often not necessarily what other people are hearing. And so when it comes to active listening, it is a business strategy, because it's going to show you where to go and what problems to solve, and really to hear what isn't being said. Even back to marketing days, like, what do? I work in intake, but what I tell people I do is I make marketing teams look good, because that's what you're selling is, I'm going to turn this investment into a much more successful investment. So you're listening for what isn't necessarily being said.
Love that. All right. I know you got to run soon, so I've got a few quickie questions we're just going to throw at you and see how you take them. All right.
Okay. Let's see. Rapid fire. I love it.
Can you fake active listening, or do clients always know?
Oh, I think people absolutely can and do fake active listening, and you get caught and you know it. And if you test that on your next Zoom meeting, call on someone unsuspecting. But what I remind my clients, the intake teams in particular, you've got to turn off the distractions. You've got to stop looking at the email coming in. You've really got to tune in and use some of those, what I call verbal nodding. You've got to repeat back what people are saying. You've got to, you've got to add so that people know you're listening. When you're taking notes in particular, you're more engaged with the process, but it can often sound like nothing is happening to the person on the other end of the phone. So you need to continue to do that verbal nodding. Mirroring and mimicking is a good strategy for that.
Love it. Behind the scene wins. What is one tiny intake tweak you made that created a major ROI?
A post-consultation follow-up campaign. We work on all these automations to make sure we get people engaged with us. And then if they convert on the first call, that's great. But what about if they don't convert? Now, typically that's just, me following up and making sure I follow up again and just checking in, all of those follow-ups. So taking a look at what happens to the unconverted caller that is qualified, that's a really important follow-up sequence. So that's an easy one to implement and win.
Love it.
But you have to do it meaningfully too. I do think, I don't want to get any of those just checking in. So how can we add value after the consultation?
What's a listening skill you teach intake reps that also works with partners or friends?
I should definitely do more of that, I suppose. I'll admit my flaws. There's a lot going on and we all have so many distractions. It would do me a world of good to really shut down when I'm trying to spend time with someone. More intentional, focused attention to the person that you're speaking with, whether that's a personal partner, a business partner, a family member. turn off the phone. I mean, I wear my watch religiously during the day, but I won't even wear it on the weekends because I get dinged up and down one wall and up one wall and down the other. So I need to be more present. So I think that that's probably a great lesson for all of us. If you ever look at how many notifications you get a day, I'm disgusting. So like even, I've been at my desk since 7:30 this morning, and I just closed a window for Slack because it was dinging while we've been having this conversation. But did I do that for any other meeting today? You must be very lucky, Dean.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. No, but we should. Like, why
I
don't
might even fold my towels later and just be like,
yeah, just hey, do it special. Make it special. Yeah. So
last one. This is just for me. How important do you think empathy is in sales calls?
well, I can tell you, I always knew it was important. But I had my own pretty traumatic experience last summer. And in dealing with medical providers in that aftermath, I learned just how important, not just empathy, but true responsiveness and delivery, really delivering on what you promise people. Empathy is this, I think it's a really misunderstood word, and I do a great lesson on it, but it really means being vulnerable enough yourself to recognize that pain in yourself. And so it's really about connecting with someone. And when someone fails to connect with the injured person or the person going through a divorce or somebody who is in some crisis, it is the loneliest place. And so I remind my intake teams that nobody calls a law firm because they're having a good day. That's number one. And if you have someone coming to you, you have to know for a fact that they are in some emotionally compromised state. And everything that you say and do is going to be amplified, because that's how, we're in this moment of stress and strain. So you're skeptical, you're doubting yourself, you're doubting them, you're feeling like everything's gone wrong. And we have the advantage of knowing that that's how people are coming to us. And so if we know that, then we have to over deliver. So I tell people all the time, if you say, let me speak with Mr. Attorney and I'll give you a call back at the end of the day. And shucks, Mr. Attorney got stuck in court. Well, you still better be picking up that phone to say, I will speak with him in the morning and let you know, sorry, I wasn't able to connect with him today. Because my goodness, when you let people down at that vulnerable emotional state, you're making a really damaging move. And like I said, that was something I experienced personally, and it really changed from knowing empathy is critically important to really seeing just how important it is.
Right. Yeah. Well, Kerri, thank you so much for hanging out with me today. I had fun.
It's lovely hanging out with you.
Maybe we can do another one specifically on empathy, and maybe we can go through some of the lesson.
Absolutely. It would always be a pleasure to spend some time chatting with you. These things are also fascinating, and a good reminder that, we really need to talk about these things because we very often forget to put on our human hat. So,
I was about to say, I feel like that's the one thing tech will never be able to take over. Empathy is not an AI tool.
Oh, it's not. We actually saw this recently at a conference. We had AI spit out empathetic language, and it did really well, but hand it to AI to deliver, and not so much. So put on your human hat, listen louder, and be there for people. I mean, it is a service industry. That's the bottom line.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much. You hang for a sec. We'll chat. Everybody else, thank y'all for hanging out with us, and we'll see you guys on the next one.
Thanks for joining us on this episode of Partnerships for Profit. We hope you've gained valuable insights on how to form profitable partnerships and take your business to the next level. Be sure to subscribe and leave us a review wherever you listen to podcasts so you never miss an episode. Got a partnership story to share or someone you'd like to see featured on the show? Reach out to us. Until next time, keep building those partnerships for profit.